to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, while the theme music was playing there, I was thinking to myself what we kind of talked about before we got started about how we're going to have an argument. And it reminded me of an old Monty Python skit from years ago where they had an argument about arguing. And they said, no, we're not having it. You can't. This isn't just arguing. We have to have an actual argument. No, but the argument isn't just contradiction. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And that's what I kept thinking about. So, what do you think? Can we match what Monty Python did? I don't know.
I never think I could ever match them, but we could try.
We can try. But Jen picked out a topic for us today. She said, let's talk about fear in growth. And, well, hey, that's a good starting point, if nothing else, because, I mean, it's a very common thing. First of all, there are a lot of people who are just afraid of growth, period. But then you bring in all the other fears that are involved. And, we're human beings are great creators. We can create fear about anything.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, is there anything we can't create fear about? And that's probably
that's what we do. We have a bias toward fear, and the category of growth is almost always associated with change. So, and the fear is, it isn't necessarily fear of growth, in my opinion. It's the fear of the change associated with the growth. And one of the things that this topic fits perfectly for a situation that's been recent in my life that you and I talked about, and I may have mentioned it briefly on one of the shows. I missed a few shows there. But sometimes, years ago when everything was falling apart for me and I had no options, you could only do what was there. There was so the change that was being forced upon me through my behavior was very scary, very uncomfortable, but I had no choice but to do it. It was almost simple. So, the idea that, well, I mean, if I want to eat food, I have to do these things. If I want a place to live, it got that basic for me. And so that point was really easy. Then as time has gone on, I've gotten very comfortable in life. I have a great, incredible life right now. As you know, I talk about, just everything's really good for me. So, in the middle of December is when I found a place that I was going to rent and move into and sell my house. And so I just made that impulsive decision to do that. And I used a feeling, a statement that one of my mentors in a mastermind meeting told me. He said, Joel, you haven't been anything impulsive or screwy or wild in years, so it's time. And so I did. And that is invigorating. So I don't view it anymore as fear, but it is, you create that change, and that it forces new stuff. And I'm buying new stuff at the house. And I'm making new connections to that neighborhood to do my handyman stuff. And it's really fun. So, by forcing change, it used to be any change was scary and fear-based, but I can't recreate the fear anymore because it's going to work out.
Well, I'll tell you, when you first told me, I think it was in November or early December, about how somebody in your mastermind group had challenged you that you hadn't done anything crazy in quite some time, that it was time to do something. I was really looking forward to see what it was going to be. And I'll be perfectly honest, renting another house in Richmond was low on the list. I thought that was a relatively mild one for you. So, I mean, where's the fear?
Well, there is, and the switching, the selling of the house, it's forcing future change. It's forcing, where I'm moving to is beautiful, but I've intentionally only taken a 1-year lease. I've intentionally only done that to force me into further change. I'm not going to get comfortable there. It's going to be a nice place to live. I got nice furniture, and I want to be comfortable while I'm living there. But there will be another move after that. I wanted to create a catalyst toward things. So, the idea of where was I going to move? Anywhere in the world I could have moved, but there was nothing drawn to me. So I said, well, I'll go to an area of Richmond that I love and do this. And then, but this move is simply planning for what the big thing's going to be. And the beauty is I have no idea what that is. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
well, I love the fact that you did that because of what you said a moment ago. You said you didn't really have a good, clear handle on what it is you did want to do.
right,
So you basically gave yourself some time.
right. I bought myself some time, but I also, the house that I'm in is basically paid for, and everything's fine here. Uh, but I could be stagnant here another 5 years and with no real catalyst. So I needed to light a fire underneath
Right,
myself.
right. Yeah.
And now I'm on a. There could be an opportunity tomorrow that comes up, and I can just say, "Oh, okay, I'll take that," because I mean I'm only obligated for a small lease for the next year, so it's not I could just pay that and go do something else too. So
Sure.
the beauty of it all is I realize by creating situations where I need to, I'm excited about them, but also sort of a little uncertain, like what am I going to do? Now, the plot's been taken away because when I made these decisions or were forced into decisions, 30 years ago, there was no backup. There was
Right,
nothing. It was, I mean, having $100 was a lot of money.
right.
And, in today's world, you can only make it so scary. You know what I mean? It's only, it's not that scary really, but I do like the idea of not knowing. So the fear within change as time goes on, I find myself, I have to create change. I want to force change into my life, and because I do have a tendency to uh, when things are good, like, well, I change that homeostasis that we have talked about historically. But for the average person out there, understanding that at the beginning of the year, where most people have resolutions, they want to change something.
Hmm.
Nobody ever really does because they're so stuck in patterns. So the fear of change is really it's not the fear of change as much as everybody would say. We want to change, but we don't really want to do the stuff associated with change. And that's what a lot of people get stuck, not fulfilling their potential, not going out there and living that exciting life, meeting new people, because I also believe the catalyst of change is going to put me in front of a bunch of other people I've never met before in a
Mhm.
new environment, which will create new opportunity and new ideas. And it's going to, it's going to be interesting. See where it goes. I'm excited about all that.
I got two different directions I want to go on this, and I'm going to try to do both of them.
Let's go left.
All right. Well, left is it's very easy when you are in as good a financial shape as you are to feel free and easy about doing something like this. Because, like you
Yes,
said, it's no. I mean, you could throw the money away on 1 year's rent and not even notice it. So there's no stress as compared to say 30 years ago, like you said, where you had no option.
no option.
$100 was a lot of money, and if anything went wrong, you were in serious trouble.
Absolutely.
Which is where a lot of people find themselves.
Sure.
I mean, maybe your circumstances were maybe a little bit more extreme than many people's are, but there are a lot of people who kind of live hand to mouth day to day, and any kind of setback is a major setback. That's a
Absolutely.
different feel from where you're at right now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
is it kind of easy for you at this point?
Yeah, it really is. It's easy. And and as I'm doing it, and it's almost like I now know the answer to the test. And so the test isn't even, I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm doing it, but I've now realized, and this is one of the great sides of the law of attraction, but it's also like, no matter what I do, Walt, it's going to work out absolutely perfectly. You know it
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh well, it's the illusion of being on a wire now.
But it also raises the question for someone who is living hand to mouth or dealing with extreme situations, extreme circumstances. It's easy to give advice, but what do you tell to somebody like that?
Well, that's a really difficult time because you're living in reactivity when you're in that place. You're
Mm,
reacting to the moment. I was at a point in my life where I was at I need to make $20 tonight waiting tables to put gas in my car.
right.
That's there were nights like that. There was, so the idea that when you're in reactivity, just you're reacting to the moment with very little ability to look forward beyond that moment. And it really is hard, but also using the law of attraction, doing what you can within where you're at, trying to get that perspective right. That's what that's what the goal is. Try to keep that perspective in tune. But it's really hard for my message when I was hearing messages when I was busted out and I didn't have anything, and people would give me advice. I just roll my eyes, going, "You don't have any idea. Your advice is solid, but my favorite piece of advice when everything fell apart for me, and I've been in recovery now for almost 30 years from a gambling addiction, and so the very first meeting that I went to, a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, I told everybody what happened. Room full of about 20 people. I was crying like a baby. Felt, and I'm like, okay, I couldn't admit it. I've stolen from my parents, and I'm this evil person, and I'm sleeping in my car. And the piece of advice that this gentleman gave me, he was very well dressed, looked Greek, like a Greek guy, really nice, obviously manicured fingernails, all this stuff. He said, "You really need to cut up your credit cards." And I was like, but if I had credit cards, I would not be here. I would not. I should have cut up my credit cards 10 years ago. I have no credit cards. There's nothing left like that. And so he didn't even remotely grasp my situation. So
Right.
when people are really down, the idea of visualizing an abundance is a really hard concept, because there's almost no point of reference, or it doesn't seem plausible, because my life today isn't, if we were to take the entire show and lay out the entire chain of events that led to today, it doesn't seem plausible that all that happened.
Right. Yeah.
It really doesn't. If you didn't know it happened and you didn't witness some of it firsthand, it doesn't seem believable.
I know exactly what you mean. And now, even as I was asking you the question, I was also asking myself, well, how would I answer that question?
Yes.
I mean, because it's not an easy question to answer.
Right.
What do you say to somebody when you're not in the state they're in, and they're in a dire strait?
Right.
Well, the best I could come up with, and I think it's probably the best answer I could give, is reflecting back to what's it been, 12 and a half years now doing this podcast, about 12 and a quarter with you. Where was I then? Where am I now? What was I looking to learn? What was I looking to understand then? What do I now understand? And what made the difference? And as I look back on that time frame, I think the one thing that made the difference, I don't remember where it came in exactly. It was probably in some of the earliest conversations I had with you. But the one thing that made the difference was just trying to feel better every day.
Yes.
When I first heard that idea, that was the first time we had talked about law of attraction. I think by that time you and I had already mentioned Abraham Hicks. We had a pretty good handle on it. You were definitely further along than I was, but in terms of our conversations, we had developed it to the point where we had covered quite a bit of the whole topic.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of background there. But hearing that phrase, just look to feel better every day, somehow resonated with me in a way that nothing else did. Not that nothing else resonated, a lot of things resonated, but that one just kind of stuck out. It made it easy. It made it simple in the midst of what is not easy and what is not simple.
Absolutely. And that's the the idea of feeling better. What that's signaling, if you can just take a moment, even if you reduce your ungodly fear of what's going on for a minute, or just any change in your energy. Now, at the time, I don't know if I would have heard that change in your energy or feeling better, but that is some of the best advice. All it takes is a little bit of movement. The law of attraction is the most powerful law in the universe, and it operates without opinion or emotion. It just goes. And most people use it in the beginning, particularly. They don't realize they're on what most would consider the negative side. The law of attraction is operating. So when you're in the woe is me, the world's falling apart, all these terrible things are happening, then that's the reality. And that's what the law of attraction delivers. So the feeling better part, if you can get a glimpse of that and start to believe, and the hard part for me was just taking that leap of, and then it's going to get better. And the incremental things that started getting better, and you just start noticing a little bit, then you start to believe a little more. To me, if I would have had the ability to, which I don't know how I could, But day one, when you and I were talking, if we were into it, we're discovering. I used to laugh, say we're still in kindergarten, we're figuring this out.
Right, right.
But if I had the ability just to uh, say and truly mean it, I believe everything I believe right now instantly, my life would have been an instant straight up. It would have gone straight up.
Oh, yeah.
But I could only accept it incrementally,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
the key.
That's exactly the key.
Yeah, it isn't that the law of attraction couldn't provide it instantly. I just wasn't believing that was a possibility.
Right.
And now today's world, there's nothing I don't believe. So it's just like, that's why I said the statement earlier. I have the answers to the test. I just, yeah, here we are. Whatever I want to point is point and click now. So whatever you want.
We were supposed to, Anne Marie and I were supposed to interview a guest earlier today, but that show never actually came off for a variety of reasons that we'll iron out and hopefully bring that guest back another time. But instead of doing a show, we were just kind of chatting because we kept thinking, well, the guest is going to come at any moment. And actually, the guest tried to connect at one point and we figured, okay, they're going to try to reconnect, and they never did. But we just had a conversation, and we were talking literally about this, about the incremental development of belief and of the ability that we all have, to kind of move the needle about how we're feeling.
Yes.
And
yes.
we were both in agreement that when we look back on where we were, say 10, 15 years ago compared to now, my goodness, we have made a lot of progress. She and I were both agreeing on it. We made a lot of progress in terms of how well we're able to move that needle. Now, can I move the needle as far as I want to? No, not even close yet. But boy, oh boy, can I move it a whole lot more than I could before. Now, if you had tried to explain that to me 12 years ago, I would say, well, yeah, that sounds great, but forget that. I don't see how that's going to happen, because that's something that has to happen over time. Like you were just saying, you have to kind of learn it. You have to kind of, just pick it up a little bit at a time and develop a little belief here and a little belief there, and then take 3 steps backward and 2 steps forward and all that kind of stuff. And then only when you look back over a long period of time do you realize, oh, I really am making progress. I can see it there. For the first time, I can actually see it.
Well, when you spend a lifetime developing the belief systems that are stored subconsciously about lack and about you're cursed and you're unlucky, or you whatever narrative you have, that's been stored subconsciously, as we've talked about a lot. So it's there. And the reason we can't instantly manifest and bring things is because no one has direct access to your subconscious brain. You have to slowly, coax it to see things differently. You have to give it new information, and then eventually the subconscious brain goes, wait a minute, this is a change here. We'll reprogram. But when you spend a lifetime of based in fear, based in loss and lack and everything going wrong, then that's what you keep bringing to yourself. And it is, again, law of attraction has no opinion, so it's just responding to all that takes place there. So the accelerated version of this is still going to be slow, because it's only the rate that your subconscious belief system can change. Also, our theory, we've talked about this, some of my younger clients, 12, 13, 14-year-olds that implement this, they press a button and they do it instantly, because they don't have that programming problem. It's like, okay, well, let's just go. And they're far better at it than we are, because they can do it far faster.
They actually give me hope, actually.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, the fact that they're able to flip a switch that easily gives me great hope, because what it tells me is, as retarded as I feel sometimes, as slowed down as I feel sometimes, I can learn to change faster. And I have been.
Yeah.
I've demonstrated that to myself over the last 12 years. I am able to learn faster. It may take me longer to get to that particular speed that they're at than I would have wanted to, but the fact that they are there at all tells me it's reachable. Sure. And the fact that I made progress shows me that it's reachable. So it's reachable. I can get there. I don't know necessarily when, but I know I can get there.
Absolutely. And that's that, when you take place and you visualize something and it goes forward, it's you're like, oh, okay, well that just shows up. When I decided to, go rent me a place over in this neighborhood that I love,
Hmm.
you know, it literally showed up. One showed up. The one I like, the one
I love
overlooking the pond. Just the I walked in and the owner happened to be cleaning it. She's a realtor, happened to be cleaning it. I said, I'll take it, and she's like, what?
that.
And she said, well, you got to qualify. And I go, I think we can pull that off. And we did. And I gave her the deposit. We just did it.
That is funny. You got to qualify if she'll admit.
But it was automatic. And she kept thinking, I just kept thinking this was some kind of scam because nobody just walks in and does what you just did. And I go, yeah, that's what I do. And so it's fun. It's something, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it's also when you get to the side of it where, as you're saying, just Bob Proctor talked about one day, he said he wanted, if I remember the story correctly, he had this idea and it was just this concept. He wanted to do a seminar on this one concept. And he said, this could probably make us $1 million. And he goes, okay, no, it's going to make us $1 million. And he said, within a 1 hour period, him and Sandy created this thing, got it set up, and already declared it made $1 million. Within 2 weeks of it doing, it made the $1 million. And he said, it's fun, but it's not surprising anymore. It's just, it's so plug and play. It's science to him. It was, and it was just, he's still the most confident man I've ever met in the law of attraction.
Yeah. Well, I've never met him, but just from having seen his videos, I can see you draw that conclusion, because everything that he said, he just said with 100% confidence.
Absolutely. He's fantastic with it. But he said when he was younger, he said, I don't know how this is working, but it's working. I'm going to keep doing it. He said, now I know how it's working, and it's automatic.
Which is really cool. Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that he was able to pull that off for as long as he did, first of all, shows that the whole thing actually works, which is quite reassuring, especially to those of us who've been in a bad place. But also he demonstrates that the ease is there at any age. I mean, he was doing this kind of stuff right to the end of his life.
Absolutely. He's well in his 80s.
Yeah. So it's not something that is age dependent. I mean, we've talked about how, you develop all this baggage over a lifetime and it can make things harder. But I think he demonstrated that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be the older you get, the more baggage you have, the slower it is, the harder it is, and so forth. It can actually get easier. And in fact, your story demonstrates that. You were just talking about that a moment ago, right?
Yes.
You were talking about how you've gotten to the point now where literally anything that you try to do, you just know it's going to work.
Absolutely. And it's automatic.
It doesn't matter who the president is.
Yeah, I just realized that changed today. So we're good with that. But but again, it's what you allow in to handle all this stuff. What you're looking at. The last week we've had an incredibly weird chain of events in Richmond with the storm. We lost water for a while. I got this really bad respiratory infection. So it's been a really, really odd time for around here, and for me in particular. And I just never, it's not anything I really, it's like, yeah, well, I mean, we have to deal with it. We can complain about it. We can look at it. I didn't know didn't know if we were going to be without water for a day or a week or a month.
Right.
And I just identified some Airbnbs and said, if we got to get out of here, we're going to get out of here, and they'll eventually get this water thing fixed. Now, they had it fixed in a day, and we didn't really, go without, it felt pretty nasty one day. I didn't shave. That was ugly. But other than that, that was my big problem, this whole thing. But I could have responded if I needed to make a response to that. I could have, whatever, it would have been fine. But the idea that once you're prepared for life in the way of understanding the fear of life goes away. The fear of what's going to happen goes away, because I don't know what's going to happen. I just know everything that happens will continue to be on my benefit. When we've been talking for a long, long time, and I say this is the beginning of any presidential change. I don't know how or why, but at the end of 4 years today, I promise you, I'm going to be better off today than I am today, as
Mhm.
I was with the last administration and the one before that and the one before that.
Mhm.
It,
Because it
it's
has
just
nothing to do with the
it
administration.
has nothing to do with administration because I'm not going to operate on any parameters that other than the parameters that bring me success, and I don't know how it'll look, but there'll be some way I'll take advantage of what's going to happen.
Which is the excellent way to do it. I'm curious also because you've achieved quite a bit of success to the point where, like you were saying, you just feel confident about anything that you're going to attempt. It's just going to happen. I'm getting very close to that. I'm a lot closer than I was 12 years ago for sure, and more and more things are falling in place for me. So I'm feeling more and more confident every day. But I want to ask you about how you look at what you see other people going through, because especially you as a life coach, you deal with people who are dealing with often very severe problems,
Mhm.
sometimes not so severe, but people who are dealing with stuff every single day, and you basically get to have a front row seat watching what's going on, not just in their lives but in their thought processes. That's a privilege a lot of us don't really have. It's a pretty cool privilege, and yet
Yes.
even without that privilege, I look out. Well, I look at the world partly through these podcasts because I interview so many people who come onto the show, and I learn a lot of stuff about people that way. But also just people I encounter in my everyday life. I find myself now looking at them and seeing them quite differently from the way I would have, say, 10, 15 years ago. Now it's like I can hardly even look at anybody. I don't care where they are in their path. I don't care how further advanced they are, how to use the enlightenment term, how enlightened they are or unenlightened. I don't really care where they are on that spectrum. I can see the growth happening. I can see the conflicts happening. I can see the potential ways that they are playing out. I can see how the person's grappling with it or perhaps losing ground on. I can see the whole thing. And I am more and more amazed at, despite the fact that we have a global society of people who are struggling in so many different ways, I'm amazed at how well people are struggling.
Mhm.
I mean, that maybe that's just my perspective from this side of where I am in my life, but I'm kind of curious. Do you see like the same thing? Do you get the same kind of sense I'm getting? I get a really positive sense, despite the fact we have this big global divide going on, a country that's divided. We got all these crazy economic things. I feel good about it. Am I
I,
crazy?
yeah, yeah. Well, yes, that's a separate topic. You
Oh,
are.
all right. Well, fair enough. Okay.
Fair enough. That's a different topic. But seriously, the the difference between you and I don't see all that. I assume what you're saying is true with all that suffering and all the other stuff and all. But maybe I mean, but it
But
doesn't.
you
It's
don't even
not.
see the suffering part.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it.
Wow.
And I see thriving. I'm tuned into that. I see growth. I people that I expect growth. I expect, and again, I'm limited to the people I pretty much work with on a daily basis. People in my orbit, people I consult with. I don't watch the news. I have sort of side knowledge because you can't help but hear of it.
Yeah.
Today, I found out shockingly that I now live on the Gulf of America.
I
So,
love that.
I've been awesome about that. And but other than that, that was my big news today. Until I found out today was the presidential inauguration. That was
Mm,
another thing. So, but I get to the same place you are because all I see is forward. I see people going through and they get up and they don't quit and they that's what I filter for. And there are some. Well, you and I had a lady that haunts me from many years ago. She was in some ungodly country,
oh
uh,
yes.
somewhere in something Afghanistan, probably something one of those
I
things.
think she
And
was in Pakistan. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And she just didn't have. I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't know what to do. She was sequestered and she was basically captured and didn't have
Right.
any. And I just didn't know what to tell her. I mean, and I never knew what happened to her. I don't know if you do, but it was this idea that it was very sad because I couldn't even come up with a path forward in my mind for her other than trying to adjust your mindset. And I didn't know how that would even work out for her. So it's out there.
It is out there. I honestly don't know what happened with her either. I do see references to her periodically because I'm still connected to her on the social media.
Right.
So I'll see an occasional reference, but I don't know the details of what's going on with her. What I can tell you is the very little bits of information I picked up tells me that she has managed to find ways to create cracks in that life jail cell that she found herself in. And I don't know exactly how that's played out, but I get the impression that she was at least in some sense been able to make a jailbreak, but basically break through all that stuff.
That's
how far?
fantastic.
I don't know how far she's gotten with it.
Well, I have I've seen people in literal prisons, with no perceivable way out of be able to turn things around and be able to miracles happen within that. So I never doubt that it's possible. I just, when you see situations like, I don't know what you do, that doesn't mean there's nothing to do. And
Right.
just feel a little better. That's the only advice I think we were able to give her at the time. Just try to find joy in something, try to find moments. If you look out, you see a sunset that's beautiful, let's appreciate that. That's you feel bad about giving that advice to somebody that's in that desperate of situation, but that's all I could come up with. And
which was great advice, by the way. I think it was probably the best thing we could have said.
Yes, and it's you have empathy for that situation, but I also, not that I'm shutting my everything down, where I don't want to see what's going on out there. It's just the way it works for me is, if you're going to go focus on everything that's wrong and all that's going on, and I know people that's all they do, and that's fine, but you're going to get that. That's going to be your life. There's going to always be that. If you have the ability to always see what's the cool side of things, the opportunity in things, the hope, the good health. We woke up today. There's really nothing else that matters, but we woke up today. That's the biggest news in the world behind quantum theory.
True.
So just saying.
I don't know if I told you, I'm in the process of setting up a second business. I kind of made a hint earlier.
Did
I tell you about the nature of the business?
No.
Oh, well, the short story is, as you know, I've been running a gardening business for quite a few years now. And it occurred to me on New Year's Day, actually. People make resolutions on New Year's Day. I get ideas coming to my head. But on New Year's Day, I got the idea, well, there's actually only one difference between the business I do and the house cleaning business. And that is, one gets done inside the house and one gets done outside the house. But the rest of the business is pretty much the same. So since I can run a gardening business without knowing anything about gardening, I wonder if I can run a house cleaning business without knowing anything about house cleaning. And so that's what I've been pursuing.
I love it.
In the process of pursuing that, I placed an ad on Indeed. I got a bunch of responses, found one woman around our age, actually, who, she is just over the moon with excitement at the idea of working with me, which is what happens, of course, when you're leaning into feeling good, you're leaning into the law of attraction, you get good stuff like that happening. And after talking to her, she literally, I didn't have to even interview her hardly. She basically sat down with me and started telling me all the things that I wanted to hear from an ideal candidate without me asking a single question. It was ideal. It was the best possible situation you could have. But she made an interesting comment recently. And I don't remember exactly I know what the context was. We're trying to get the first ads going. And because of today's also, besides the inauguration date, it's also Martin Luther King Day, and I had forgotten that, and that affects the way ad schedules work. So the bottom line was, an ad that I was hoping was going to run tomorrow isn't going to run tomorrow. It's probably going to be another week before it runs. And so I sent her a note to that effect. I sent her a text message, and she wrote back something to the effect of, I've been told that things work out for a reason, but I don't really believe that. And it made me think about that for a second, because that's a fairly common cliche, right? The idea that, well, things work out for a reason. But how many people actually believe it? Some people do, some really don't. She's one who doesn't really believe it. And I thought about it. I said, what that really means is, yes, I do believe that things happen for a reason. I just don't know what the circumstances are. I don't know. I don't see them happening. I don't experience them directly. In fact, the number of things, the percentage of things that could happen that I find out about directly, for the good or for the bad, whatever, is a tiny percentage of the overall.
Yeah.
So it's actually remarkable if I can match things up, right? I can match up. Here's the result that came from me trying to manifest something.
Right.
That's actually kind of amazing when that happens.
Yes.
But most of the time, we're not going to find out what's going on. So, yeah, I think you do. I think you can believe that things happen in the time that they need to happen, even if you don't see them happening, because it happens all the time. Stuff happens all the time that we don't know about, and it always works out.
And here's an example. I had a client, and this happened this morning, and so without giving away too much information, this client has had a difficult breakup, and is there he's married with a couple of children,
Mm,
and so it's been a really difficult breakup, and
sure.
he had found this part of let's pick a state, found in, let's call it Georgia.
Okay.
Found a part of Georgia where he's familiar with, and uh near the water. His family has great means, and so he was going to, he put in a bid on this home, and he was going to buy it, and then his fiance was going to go get an apartment somewhere, and they're going to get separated. And that was well, she then decided that her apartment was going to be right near where he was at, and it drove him crazy because he was trying to get away from her, and all that. This whole thing was going on, right. So and this is his side of the story, by the way, so I'm just
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah, so trust me, I'm not taking his side here. And he was like freaking out. I can't believe she's going to do this. I said, just take a breath for a moment. Let's take a breath. And so, long story short, this led him to look for something else, another place. Well, then he found this incredible estate that has 50 acres, and it's beautiful, has a pond and all this. And it got him looking in a whole different direction, that he was stuck on one outcome. So the idea that the delay in him getting separated, the delay of the closing of the house, did serve a purpose to give him a new idea. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
Yeah. So sometimes you're delayed because what you're about to do is not what it's going to be, and sometimes you need more. So I think delays sometimes do happen for a reason. I think life events happen to put you in places. So the law of attraction uses everything in its disposal to bring you what you're attracting. So sometimes it's not letting you get what you think you want, because that's not really what you're putting out there.
Yes, that's a very important point. I think a second point that goes along with that is that we always are attracting what arrives.
Yes.
Even when what arrives is something we didn't like.
So true.
And it's frustrating as all hell, and it makes it very difficult when we're in that kind of a space to say, well, I didn't want to attract that. I wasn't trying to attract the auto accident. I was trying to attract these terrible events that happened. And it's a kind of a gut check at that point, because how can I possibly believe in this LOA crap, when I have to put up with the idea that I attracted all this negative stuff into my life.
Right.
To me, though, that's where I find the greatest amount of evidence that it actually works. Because when I finally am able to get honest with myself, I mean, deeply, deeply honest, bone-crushingly honest about whatever role I played, which usually means that I was in a relatively lower vibrational space for an important period of time. Whenever I can get honest about that, I have to say to myself, damn, this thing works. I just got to learn to work at the other direction.
Well, and that's a great way to look at it as well. And also understanding that the way it works for me is just you don't have to manage the process. So you don't know sometimes you've gotten what you've asked for because you're trying to manage the process too much.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, given my history, I would say that makes a ton of sense.
I was being a smart ass. I really was, of course.
Well, we have a lot to learn about how you have an argument. This is about as close to an argument as we ever get.
No, but seriously, but that idea that the path to what I'm manifesting, once it's on, I just let it happen, even if it seems like, well, this isn't going right. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing at all. So,
Yeah.
I just, the law of attraction always always lets me. It imagine being the law of attraction deal with me. It's like, oh my God, this guy. But it just comes in, and you know that. But I just don't. I don't. I've learned not to micromanage the process. I don't know how it's going to work. It just always works. It never happens the way I wanted to happen or thought I should happen, or whatever. It just happens. Like taxes, my quarterly taxes were due. I had a huge, just spent so much money over this last quarter, and the more money I spent, the more money just kept showing up, and it was just, but it was like it was laughable, and so I just start just sending checks out to pay for everything. Here's more money shows up. It's just I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to do that.
I love that. That's funny.
Yeah.
But it also shows that the thing never plays out the way we expect it to. I think that's what your point is.
Ever. I mean, that's the thing for me. The idea that I never ever, now that doesn't mean that I'm a big believer in taking action as well. So I do take action. I go do the stuff I want to do, and I work really hard in the gym. I work a lot of hours. I still do what I love. So it isn't like I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, let's just sit on the couch and this happens. I just have come to accept, if I do my part, if I do my action, it'll all show up, and I have no idea how it got there, but it's there.
Which is disconcerting.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. Because when the stuff shows up, you say, huh?
Yeah.
What? How did that happen?
Yeah. It was, you have all this coming up, so I don't even, so when the expenses come up and you look at the gigantic, the way that when you pay quarterly taxes, as you know, I don't know how many of our audience does that, but so January 15th is the last from last year. So that was bad. But now you have the next one coming up in March or whenever that is. And
tax
now,
day actually in April.
yeah. So you have that one coming up, which you got to pay. I made more than my estimated cover anyway, so I got to make up that. Then I got to do the new estimated. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just keep writing the checks. It'll just keep showing up. Yeah, it just keeps doing it. But the system has, if I focus on the drain or the perception of the lack of money, then it gets, I just don't even, I don't do that, because it's just, there's always just more money there.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, because I'm going through the process of actually starting up a business, all the paperwork, all the, you have to file for the employer identification number, you have to file with the state, there's different kinds of taxes you have to file for and so forth. And it's mind numbing. It's a little frustrating because you're having to deal with bureaucracies and all that kind of thing. And over the last few days, because of the holiday, I forgot how the holiday was going to impact stuff. So, it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that, okay, now I got to go do, I can't do this because it's a holiday. I have to wait till tomorrow, but I can't do this part over here until I do that part that can't be done until tomorrow.
Yes.
So it was fairly easy to get myself into a place of, am I going to get this thing done? This is like so frustrating. What this is making me think of, though, is I compare how I'm reacting now to how I would have reacted the last time I started, which was about 2 years ago, actually, when I bought out my ex-wife for the gardening business. And the difference is now I can look at the crazy stuff that goes on right now and the timings that aren't working out and so forth, and kind of shrug the shoulders in a way that I really couldn't do as easily before. And 2 years ago, I was doing pretty good at that too, although it was also kind of a rough time because I'd gone through divorce. But before that, the last time I had done it was about, I'm going to say 10, 12 years before that. That was an entirely different experience. Much more negative, much more frustrating, much more feeling like I was pounding my head against the wall. And the reason I say all this is, it's not like I'm not feeling all the stuff that I felt before. It's just, I don't really care about it as much.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, it's there. It's something to be dealt with. I know that if I can just let it go by It's going to go by. It's going to be all right. Everything's going to work itself out. And so I guess maybe it's the experience of having been, beaten up a few times that you say, oh, all right, well, I can handle it this time. First time's the hard one.
It is. And then one of the things that I posted earlier today, and we're the season, on the back end of the season, for a lot of my young males are getting broken up with by what they perceived as their soulmates. And so, I have a formula for them. Don't look at Instagram, don't message them, go straight home, go to the gym. I have some things that are like, just if you stick to this is the formula. And you see that because the tendency of the loss of what this person thought they were, just, this is the most important person in my life, and we've talked about having children and getting married after college, and turns out she broke up with him, has been dating another guy for the last month, hadn't told him yet. So so it's this horrible existence while you're doing that, because all you can, when you break up, those kind of breakups, especially the young, for any breakup, but the younger brain in particular, which is not used to, not because you don't realize, look, there's 18,000 other women out there today available today, right now, this moment, but at that, when you're that age, it's like, this is the loss, this is, and so it's pervasive. The reason I use that example is when your thoughts are so pervasive of loss and lack and all that, it's terrible. It makes you, it occupies all your thought all day.
It does. Yeah.
And so being able to step away from that and look at, like, what is right, where are we going to be able to go with this? What, the silence, and instead of, I wonder what she's doing right now, all those thoughts, and then replaying the conversation of the breakup over and over in your head, word for word, thinking you need to text her one more thing and somehow talk her out of it. And, and now the amazing thing is, after a couple of weeks, we're good. We're good. But you wouldn't be convinced of that. So as we're working through stuff, I use that example because everybody can relate to that feeling.
Absolutely.
At some point. But afterwards, it's like, wait a minute, the women that I broke my heart years ago, right now, I'm like, oh my God, so I'm so grateful they're not in my life right now.
Right. Yeah.
That makes a difference.
And anybody who has been through divorce knows, take what you said and multiply it by about 10 to 20, depending on how long you were married, and did you have kids and all that kind of stuff, because it's 10, 20, 100 times worse. And yet even there, the same thing applies.
Yeah,
the exact same thing applies. You go through that part where you're replaying all the conversations, you're replaying what could have happened, what should have happened, and so forth, until finally you get to the point where you say, enough already.
Yeah,
just enough already.
Yeah, and and part of what you said, when the things that don't, like, after you go through this enough, you've been beat up from it, you survived it, it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm going to be fine. And once you have that belief that you're going to be fine, that happiness, you can find it again, then you're good. And then after the years of going through what I went through and all the struggles, eventually one day you just wake up and go, it's already worked out. It's worked out. There's nothing left anymore to worry about. There's not.
You were mentioning earlier how when stuff plays itself out and you end up with a result that you were hoping for, but it certainly was not what you had in mind in terms of how you were going to get there.
Yes.
One of the things that occurs to me about that is that not only do we not have any sense of of having precognition how we were going to get there, but even when we got there, a lot of it is just outside of our awareness about how it happened. So if we had to try to explain to somebody what the sequence of events was, we could tell them the sequence as we understand it. I know this happened, I know that happened, and I know that happened. But the gaps, we can't fill the gaps.
Yeah.
Because we were part of those gaps. The gaps happened outside of our awareness.
Yes.
That's frustrating.
It really is.
But it's also, again, where when you have that happen a few times, that's where the confidence comes from. Because
When
after a while, you begin to realize, oh, this stuff really does play out to my own best interest.
and when I view it through the lens that the law of attraction is working on my behalf the entire time. And
Mm.
and what I don't want, in fact, if it were to try to say, hey, Joel, here's what we're doing, I'm going to go, no, don't want to hear that. Just do it. I don't dive in the details. Before Mike Dooley went crazy, he had that, the Cursed House, which I
The
was,
Cursed House, that's right.
yeah. His stuff, I used to love his stuff. It was so,
Mm.
it's still like his old stuff. It was so good. Uh, but it was this idea that don't get hung up on all that. And so when you understand, and I'm not making conflicting statements when I'm say I'm a believer in action. My action is to get up every day, to work out, take care of my physical self, do my meditations, to be kind to the people around me, to work with my clients, to give talks, whatever. That's the stuff. Every day I'm supposed to go do that. And I do that every single day of my life. You know that. But the rest of the stuff is any details outside of that. I know my part of the action. The law of attraction does its part, and I really don't know want to know how we did that.
You don't want to know. That's an interesting way
but
of looking at it.
Yeah, just I like being surprised.
Well, that's kind of like the roller coaster mentality, isn't it? I mean, I'm not a roller coaster guy, but that's really what it's about with a roller coaster, being surprised on every curve.
Yeah, it's fun, and it adds that, it's just going to be there. So like, not and these things don't even matter. Over the holidays, my schedule is all over the place. And I said, look, I'm going to just keep a low key over the holidays. I'm not going to do much. And I'm just going to take some days off. It'd probably be good not to make any money for them the year, just for tax things. And so, but yet I kept doing what I do and ended up having the busiest holiday season I ever had, made so much more money, I have a list of people. I have like 7 people I got to call back who are interested in new services.
Wow.
Couple of the big commercial guys that want to do consulting and stuff. So these are big things. And I haven't ever solicited any of my consulting stuff other than say I'm a consultant. That's the extent of what I've done.
That was a brilliant marketing plan, I must say.
Yeah. And so I consult, the consulting that I do is usually with addiction treatment centers from around the country. And so I go and make a proposal. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll turn it around, look at the case. And those are very lucrative when I do those. So it's this, but I have never advertised, hey, let me do some consulting. People have always contacted me for that.
It's interesting what you're describing, because first of all, there are a whole bunch of marketing experts who, if they try to teach the same thing, would be out of business really quick.
Yes. Yes.
And so it would undermine a number of careers that way. But what a way of looking at things. I mean, I think about the different pitches that come my way. I mean, anybody who's alive today gets marketing pitches.
Sure.
But I'm one of those people that actually pays attention, not for the purpose of buying the pitch, but just seeing how I'm being pitched. I'm kind of obtuse that way. I like to, I like to kind of go against the grain and just pretend like I'm not the one who's being pitched.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It sounds strange, but I just like to kind of analyze it just to see what they're doing and so forth. And it's amazing to me how, despite all the advances that have been made over the last 20, 30 years, particularly with the internet, in terms of helping people to understand what works in marketing and what doesn't work, it's amazing how many people still do what doesn't work and how many people teach what doesn't work. That's the part that still blows my mind. I get a lot of stuff from people who clearly have no idea what they're doing.
Wow.
And are coming off as experts and some of them probably making some money on being experts at not being experts. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yes.
And yet it's also amazing to me how few really grasp what you just said. I can't remember the last time I had a so-called marketing expert come to me and say, well, my entire marketing plan was to say I'm a marketer. Seriously, I can't remember the last time that happened.
Yeah, yeah, it works. It works, but I get this one guy in particular was very persistent. So I get emails every day about how I can increase my coaching business, whatever, and all that.
Right.
And so this one guy, it's an individual. I could tell his emails were individually written. They were, and so I want to read those, and
so I you did the same thing then. You like to play that game too.
Well, I like this guy for whatever reason just sounded really enthusiastic, and so I read his email. Normally I just delete him. I read his email, and he would send me one every other day. But it was like, Joel, I know I can really help you if you would just let me, if you take 5 minutes of your time, you just call me, and so finally I just said, I'm going to shock this guy and call him.
Oh my God! All right.
Yeah. So I called him, and he answered very professional. Obviously sounded pretty young, and I go, I'm Joel Elston. He goes, oh my God, you called me back. And I go, yeah. And he goes, I know I can help you with your coaching business. I said, I want to help you with your business. I said, because do not send me another client. I do not want any more. I don't need that, please. And he laughed. And I go, he said, do you do any advertising? I said, no, I don't do any. I just got my website, and it's not optimized. I know search engine. I don't care about all that stuff. But I started talking about his mindset on what he's doing. And so I enjoyed giving him like about a 15-minute rah, just talking about that. And, he goes, but I really think you use my services. I go, thank you. I appreciate your relentlessness, but the part you're missing is I don't need any more clients. I don't. But thank you. And he sent me a nice email thanking me. He said, man, he said, he said, your energy is obvious of why you don't need my services. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I probably get 20 of those a day, but most of them are massively sent, and they're not, this guy was, I liked him because I just tried to pick out who seemed like whatever area I was working on. I try to figure out the life coach that seemed to have the most together, like would be the person to go to. I'm not blanketing everybody in your town. Yeah. And I told him,
I love the fact that he actually picked up on your energy.
Yeah, well, I did. I said I would recommend, if you wanted to check with one of the other life coaches in town who need their business increased, I'll be glad to vouch for you. You seem like a really good guy. And he said, man, I'd love that. And so, but it's one of those things. You just life becomes such a it is on cruise control. That doesn't mean I don't get up and do everything that I do every day, sure. But I just expect it. It will work out. Always.
Like that. Yeah. I think that's really what we're all trying to learn, is to believe that.
Yes.
And we talked about that earlier, right? The lack of belief, and how we're kind of incrementally trying to ratchet up the belief a little tiny bit at a time every single day and so forth. But that's what we're trying to build up to. We're trying to actually believe that every day.
And when you really look at this to me, this is a big amusement park. This is all a game. and when it's over, it'll be like, okay, that was nobody will ever, no matter what, people can say whatever they want about me. Nobody will go, he lived a boring life.
Yeah, that's about the last thing I would expect anybody to say about Joel, his life. Yeah.
So he left it all out there. I can fully say whether it's tomorrow or 25 years from now or 50 years from now, I will, when I'm done, I'll have gotten everything I can out of this. I promise you.
And have fun every step of
every day. It's despite it all, you can imagine I laugh multiple times every single day.
I do imagine. Well, I don't have to imagine. I can see it. All I have to do is look at you, for goodness sake.
Yeah, we're
not always difficult to figure out.
yeah. So it's a real fun. It's a fun thing, and I do work with some very serious stuff. I don't make fun of my clients or anything like that.
No, of course.
But I bring a lot of humor to the table for me and my friends and my family. Humor has allowed me, I think it's one of my greatest assets as a parent, not take anything too seriously.
I love it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think it also reflects in your circle of friends, because I get to see your circle of friends and the comments they make on social media.
Yes,
You
they're
know,
hilarious.
and it's very evident. It's very obvious. The people who surround you are like-minded. I mean, sure, we all have differences. We have different beliefs and different thoughts and different strategies and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, on the whole, they're like-minded. They,
Well,
they, they feel very much the way you do. And I can tell a number of them were actually clients at one point because, comments that they made and so forth. And so even though you were perhaps helping them through stuff that at the time seemed impossible to them, they also found that the things you were teaching really do work, that they really do play out, that life does work in your favor, that the game is fixed. And yes, it's fixed in your favor, not against you.
yeah.
They've discovered that.
Yeah, and so even some of my clients or my friends, they may be universally opposite of what I believe in things. They may,
Mhm.
but we still laugh together. We make
Yep.
fun of this one of my hometown friends. He's a great guy. We don't see anything at all similar. I mean, at all, but we're friends. And so, like, when I'll post something, he'll go, well, I don't disagree with that. And I'll go, well, thank God. Why? I mean, do I need better validation that we disagree?
Everybody in our circle serves a purpose. That's a
Yeah,
great thing.
absolutely. So it's a fantastic world. So, but we ended up doing pretty good with this topic, buddy.
Yeah, the only thing that we have to work on is we haven't figured out really how to do an argument. I mean, we're just
Yeah,
not good at
I
that.
I didn't expect that to go too well for us, but
Yeah. I mean, we'll practice. I'll read up on a little John Cleese and see if he can give me some ideas. But
we need a topic we really disagree. I mean, other than silliness like baseball and football, we need something different
we
than that.
tried that though with baseball. I mean, didn't we tried it? We got it like 10 minutes of arguing out of it. It was
Yeah,
great.
we lost interest. All right, buddy.
Well, I can't hardly wait to next week when we find something else not to argue about. And
That'll be
I'm
great.
looking forward to it. In the meantime, have a great week. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.